Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I'm Nick Driver. I'm a New Mexican. And today we're going to be talking about the APD launching an internal affair investigation. So we're going to jump into this news report by KOB4. Grace Reader is the journalist. So APD launches internal affair investigation after former officer sends out controversial email. Controversial email. Okay. A former Albuquerque police officer is subject of an internal investigation for sending I can never say this word right, contentious email to his fellow officers on his way out the door. You know what's funny is in the title they say controversial email and then they use contentious down here, and they're like, why? Why don't you just continue using the same word over and over? Why would you switch it up? It just makes no sense. It's just confusing for people. In the email, the officers thanked his coworkers for their friendship and the department for its training. Okay, that's good. The officer's email went on to address things like police reform, where he wrote in part, "Remember that the overwhelming majority of citizens do not care about police reform, but rather they care about the crime that is plaguing this city. It is your job to take care of that crime, and you should not be constrained from doing so." I don't disagree with that. Like he says, so right now in Albuquerque we have a lot of police officers quit. We need police officers. We had just a weekend ago or so, we had a bunch of officers resign from our emergency response team, all in backlash to basically what they're talking about. Everyone's yelling for police reform, police reform, police reform. At the same time, they're also yelling, defund the police, defund the police, defund the police. And then also on the same note, you had the Derek Chauvin trial or Chauvin trial in Minneapolis, which basically, in my opinion, was a public lynching of a police officer, because if you've seen the tapes and everything, the second degree charges don't make sense. I mean, I can understand maybe manslaughter, but like the other two charges make no sense. Especially if you've watched the video footage and you know everything. I mean, like, really? Come on. That was done because the mob was complaining, and so the mob lynched that police officer, just like some other police officers. And as LeBron James tweeted out the other day, he's promoting violence and lynching of police officers. So let's I can understand why police officers feel the way they do. I mean, like I said, they want police reform, but they also want to defund the police. And then the police know if they do their job, they just doing their job could get them sent to jail for the remainder of their lives. I don't know. I don't think I would want to be a police officer if that's the case. I mean, there was a point in time where I did want to be a police officer. But in the political climate we live in today, I don't see any reason why any white person, and yes, I'm going to be using color here, that why any white person would want to be a police officer. Just saying. We call that a little parting gift, said Sean Willoughby. Let's go back to the article, sorry. We'll call that a little parting gift, said Sean Willoughby, president of the Albuquerque Police Officers Association. That parting gift was matched by APD with one of their own, an internal affairs investigation. I think in a highly sensitive reading of the email, they might say, "Oh my gosh, he said something negative about reform," which is absolutely comical, Willoughby said. I agree. However, APD Chief Harold Medina said it was unfair in that police officer to make that Chief Medina said it was unfair of that police officer to make that generalization. I'm having troubles reading because I feel like it should be written better, and I'm reading it the way I think it should be written. But anyways, I'm sorry. So the chief, Harold Medina, the interim chief, I don't know if he's been officially, I can't remember if he's been officially, put in, but I know he's the interim. Unfair for I don't think it's unfair. The officer's the one who's been living it. He knows exactly what's going on. He's not playing politics. Chief Harold Medina's playing politics. The police officer's not playing politics, and they're upset because he's not playing politics. So when you have an individual back to the article, when you have an individual who chooses to leave this department and make statements such as the vast majority of the community doesn't care about police reform and they care about crime only, that's an unfair statement to make on behalf of the community, Chief Medina said. I don't think it's not. I mean, just look at what's going on in our city. highest rate of homicides in the longest of time. I mean, you name it, crime has gone up like exponentially, and cops have been scrutinized even more. So yeah, the community doesn't care about police reform. They care about the crime. They don't want the crime, but obviously they don't mind it. But hey, they vote for the policies that allow these crimes to continue. Anyways, back to the article. APOA said the investigation into the officer who doesn't even work at the department anymore is nothing but a waste of time and taxpayer dollar. But the police chief disagrees. I don't even know what to tell you about that. It is a waste of time. It's like, how are you going to, and taxpayer money, run an internal investigation on someone that no longer works for you? That's like you quitting a job and then your company writing up paperwork saying you did all these bad things. And so when you go get unemployment, you're unable to get unemployment, but then you have to contest all these things that the company said you did. That's exactly what this is. So let's go back to this, finish reading what Medina has to say. So if this employee looks to get hired on in other locations, it's imperative that we have a complete process and a package to be able to allow their internal affairs to recognize and understand what type of individual they are hiring. Medina said, I would venture to say that most agencies in today's climate would have concerns if someone doesn't believe in police reform. Regardless of this specific incident, it didn't end the quote, so it's kind of, I thought it was still a quote, but, so that was the end of the quote. So basically, he's saying he would venture to say most agencies in today's climate wouldn't want to hire. No, I disagree. I mean, the problem right now is that the good cops are quitting, and we're being left with bad cops who only do what they're told. So, like, that's basically what Medina is saying. He's like, we're trying to make sure this good cop doesn't get hired anywhere else because we don't want him affecting anybody else. We want the good, loyal lapdogs. That's all we want. We want the ones when I tell them to go enforce an unconstitutional law or something that doesn't make any sense. I want them to be, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. That's all they want. They just want yes men. And it's really sad because, lots of the times we need police officers who actually police and not ones that just enforce the law that was put in place by the democratic policies and our governmental leaders with no votes or anything. They just put them into place like it doesn't matter. I mean, just take the mask mandate, for example. It's a giant constitutional right and everything, and these police are enforcing it like it's nothing, even though and gun rights, there's a lot of examples we can go on for days about, but the cops who are sitting here enforcing unconstitutional laws are the ones that are going to end up staying. And the ones that don't believe that they should be enforcing the laws and want to fight back are going to be the ones that leave. So what are you going to be left with? Nothing but police who only obey their overlords, which is kind of scary when you think about it. So anyways, regardless of this specific instance, the APOA said this is just one example of the department handcuffing its own officers by over-scrutinizing them. Yep, it's just not a fun place to work, Willoughby said. I wouldn't doubt that it's not fun. This email also comes shortly after APD Sergeant was put on administrative leave in his role in the rest of the protests earlier this month, and after an entire segment of the emergency response team resigned. And like I said, we're looking at multiple levels. Did this sergeant not do what a lieutenant told him? And I think that the general public understands the chain of command, Medina said. Was the sergeant on scene? I don't know, because why would the lieutenant be in trouble if the sergeant was on scene? Just saying. I don't know if the sergeant was there or not. It might have been a phone-in one, but at the same time, he was let go. So, I mean, that's a whole nother story. Check out, I think like 4 videos ago or so, I have my 2 pieces on that, or 2 cents on that, whatever, APD said the number of internal affair investigations are actually down. KOB4 requests those numbers, which reveals there are 20 new investigations opened November 20th, opened in November, 20 opened in December, 19 opened in January, 14 opened in February, and 24 opened in March. A lot of these policies, Grace, haven't been changed in... Wait, a lot of these policies, Grace, haven't been changed in the last 6 years. All we're saying is follow the policies that are in place, Medina said. But for the APOA, they said officers feel like they're under a microscope and that APD will lose many of them as a result. One thing is for certain, quote, one thing is for certain, there is no morale. and the officers don't feel safe doing their job because they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. Willoughby said, "It's the truth. They're damned if they do. They're damned if they don't. If they enforce the law, they're in trouble. If they don't enforce the law, they're in trouble. They're in a lose-lose situation, and it's pretty sad." And then, like they were talking about over scrutinizing the police department. Look at this: 20 in November, 20 in December, 19 in January. So what is that? 59, 14 in February. So 60, 73. And then 24 in March, so 73, 97 internal affair investigations in our city alone within the last 5 months. Sounds like they're trying to get, I mean, that sounds like over scrutinizing and keeping these guys under a microscope. I mean, and if you go back to one of my other videos, you can hear my rant about how I had a police incident and they won't do their job or the job that I think they should do because, yet again, over scrutiny and the microscope they're put under. But anyways, okay, so cops resigning, internal investigation, they're basically making the good cops quit. All right, so this, in my opinion, leads to this next article. The New Mexico red flag law rarely used, some lawmakers looked to amend. So the recent shooting at the FedEx in Indianapolis is putting a lot of attention on so-called red flag laws. New Mexico red flag law was passed in February 2020 and went into effect in May of that year. Yet again, another law that was passed that was not put to vote, but hey, yet again, the politicians in office know what's best for us. You know, we can argue about red flag laws all we want on another video. Right now, we're just going into what they want to amend to it. I'm not too opposed to what it has right now, but at the same time, there's still those outliers that could happen with the laws we have. But like I said, let's talk about this amendment, and then I'll tell you my concerns. So, extreme risk protection orders, or ERPO, or red flag laws, allow courts to temporarily seize a person's firearms if are considered a serious threat of harming themselves or others. 19-year-old Brandon Hull is accused of shooting and killing 8 people in the FedEx in Indianapolis last week. However, with Indiana being one of the more than a dozen states with ERPO laws, red flag laws, in place, there are questions as why he had guns in the first place. His mother said she told police last year that he would try to suicide by cop, and authorities removed a shotgun from his home. But he never had a red flag hearing, and later that year he was able to legally buy assault rifles. I don't know what to say about that. That's Indiana. That's not New Mexico. Like, we didn't have that issue but at the same time, they should probably investigate into that, why that didn't work for them, especially if the mom told them that he was planning suicide by cops, which I'll tell you really quick, that whole incident, they tried to turn it into a race baiting incident against I think the Sikh Muslims. Is that what it was? I can't remember. I want to say that's what it was. But when you look at it in the broader perspective, it was a kid who got let go from his job and was dwelling on it and decided to go back and do something, especially since during this whole COVID lockdown, he was probably locked inside his own home and just sitting there dwelling and listening to the news and going crazy. And then he ended up doing what he did, which is unfortunate. I don't condone it. I don't, but that kid needed mental help, and it seems like the parents weren't giving it to him. But hey, they wanted to tell the police that he was going to try suicide by cop. To me, that seems like, as a parent, you should probably monitor your child. But, I don't know. I think people should be held accountable for their children just as much as I think people should be accountable for themselves. Now, I mean, he's 19 years old. Yeah, he might have been living on his own. But if the mother already knew this... Anyways, I digress. We're not on that. We're on the New Mexico ERPO law amendment. So New Mexico has its own ERPO law. Nobody should be in favor of somebody who is in real risk for suicide or mass shooting to have guns. Nobody should be in favor of that. I agree, but yet again, you have to prove how they're going to be at risk, and that's the real issue. Opponents were concerned it would be used to take away guns away from just about anyone, but records show it has barely used to take any guns away at all. I would say it's not working well yet, but we're going to make it work, and I'm committed to that, Rep. Ellie said. I don't like how they said that, but anyways, it's only for a limited and rare situation where a person is truly at risk of killing themselves or harming others. It's not something you use all over the place. I'm so regretful that people perpetuate did a misunderstanding about the purpose, use, and applicability of the bill. Rep. Joy Garrett said, I don't know, perpetuate a misunderstanding about the purpose, use. No, the purpose is to take away guns from people they feel unfit to hold guns. There's no misunderstanding. Yet again, it comes down to who gets to decide who isn't fit to own the gun. But anyways, according to the New Mexico Administrative Office of the Court, since going into effect last May, 4 ERPO petitions have been filed. 3 of them resulted in a mandatory seizing of firearms for 1 year. But in one of those 3 cases, the order was lifted before the year was up. I expected a low number of uses because it is a very precise tool that you would only use in extreme situations. So I was not surprised by the number 4, Rep. Garrett said. So last year, 4 people had to go through this red flag law. One of them was able to get his guns back, or their guns back, before the year was up. The other 2, nope. And then the 4th one, I'm guessing they never seized the guns from. Okay. Clearly, it's back to the article. Clearly, it's not working as well as we'd like it to, so that's why we need to revisit, Rep. Ellie said. It can't just be 4 or 5 times that this would have been applicable. What was the problem? See how this rep... See, Joy Garrett gets it, understands. That's, the number 4 should... 4 I can kind of understand maybe in a year. This one is saying it's too low and those numbers need to be pumped up like she's the Wolf of Wall Street or something. Like, we need to revisit it because not enough people are getting their guns taken away each year? Okay, sure thing. Rep. Ellie and Rep. Garrett looked into this and sponsored a bill with amendments to the law in the 2021 regular session. One of the biggest changes would allow law enforcement officers to report an individual they consider an imminent threat to harming themselves or others, instead of only relatives, employer, or school administrators, as the law says now. Rep. Garrett called that change the missing piece of this legislation. That is where the first article and this one combine. They are trying to amend it so that cops can be the one who decides whether or not you can have a gun. Yet, at the same time, they're over-scrutinizing cops, defunding cops, and basically weeding the cops down to the yes men while all the good cops are leaving. So if there's nothing but yes men left, and then they get the right to say who and who does not get to have guns, who's going to stop them from just choosing people and saying, oh, they have guns, we should take those away? Who? I'm just wondering, because to me it seems like they're setting it up to where they're literally about to go door to door and start taking people's guns. They're setting it up to where cops are quitting. They're setting it up to where only bad cops are staying. And then they're setting it up to where cops can decide who gets to keep a gun and who doesn't. I'm sorry, that's a constitutional right. Y'all don't get to decide that shit. I don't care who you are. You don't get to decide. It's in my Constitution. I get my gun. You can have a gun. He can have a gun. She can have a gun. Everybody can have a gun. Okay? Now, universal background checks, I can understand that. If this person's already been arrested for gun-related violence and crime and is, I can kind of understand that. But at the same time, hey, I'm a fan of Pandora's box. Give everybody a gun and see who pulls the trigger. I'm just saying, if you walk into a restaurant and you got 10 people open and carrying, you think that guy's going to pull out the gun and try and rob the register? I mean, if he does, he's fucking retarded because he's obviously wanting to die. But anyways, let's continue on with this. One police chief from Royal, New Mexico told me his officers repeatedly went to one house where there were threats of gun violence and they felt that this was a serious situation. Ultimately, there was a murder-suicide at the house. So that's an example of where law enforcement officers could petition a judge. It could save lives, Rep. Garrett said. That's not an example. Because the fact of the matter is, if that was going on, anybody can report that at any time. If it was a domestic abuse, I hate to say this type of things because it's disappointing and upsetting. But that could have been prevented by just one of those people walking out of the house. I don't know who was the aggressor and who was not, but I mean, you just got to go. You can't stick around in those situations. So, I mean, that's not the police's fault. That's nobody's fault. There was no signs that they were going to shoot or kill themselves or each other or whatnot. It was just they were called for domestic abuse, right? Went to a house where there were threats of gun. Oh, they say threats of gun violence, and they felt that this was a serious situation. I don't understand. I don't believe that. I want to see, put up a story. Show me the story, please. This is a hearsay. One police chief from rural New Mexico. One police chief. If it was a real police chief, you should have a name. You should have an article. You should have some type of information, Rep Garrett. I think right now you're just gaslighting and making stuff up to make it seem like this bill would make sense. We're trying to strike the correct balance to make sure that people's Second Amendment rights are protected while at the same time removing what's obviously a dangerous instrumentally, said Rep. Ellie. The bill passed 2 House committees, but because of the backup of legislation preceding COVID relief during the last regular session, Rep. Garrett said they didn't see a path for the bill out of the Senate and did not move forward with it. She said she has already reached out to the governor's office to get the bill, amending New Mexico's red flag law on the call for the next session. All right. Like I said, first article, cop who quit is getting an internal investigation. Even though he's no longer with the company, they're still going to do an internal investigation to ensure that he can't get a job at any other precincts, basically. That's exactly what Chief Medina said. He wants to make sure that they get whatever dirt they can. And like I said, that's like you quitting a job and then your job saying you did a whole bunch of crap you didn't do. Once you're gone, they can't do anything about that. And then, we got the cops quitting. We got them leaving special teams. We got people demanding defund the police at the same time asking for reform. And then we also got politicians trying to say cops can choose who can have guns. New Mexico is going downhill. Vote for a Republican this next session. That's all I can say. Get these Democrats out of office because it's their policies for the last decade or so, if not more, that has brought New Mexico to where it is today. And it's not up. If you think New Mexico is up from where it was 10 years ago, you are sadly mistaken. We are higher. Let's say this. We are up. We're higher in murders and homicides. We're higher in bad education. We're higher in homelessness. We're higher in drug usage. We're higher in drunk driving accidents. I mean, yeah, that's what all your policies have been putting into place. And I can go off on each policy individually, and we can definitely do that one time. Write in the comments. Tell me what you think. Yell at me. Disagree, agree. Do something. But this can't fly much longer. It just can't fly. I mean, New Mexico, you need to make a stand. We need to get these Democrats out of office. We need to take care of New Mexico. Anyways, that's all I got for you today. If you made it this far, like, comment, subscribe. I know I went off on a few tangents and it might not all mash together and blah, blah, blah. And hopefully it doesn't get taken down for my one cuss word. But other than that, like, comment, subscribe, share. I'm Nick Driver. I'm a New Mexican and I care about you.